So why do we need compliance? So for many of us, compliance was just a bad word, right? It was a pain in the neck. That means we had to secure things within our environment, and they had to live up to a set standard of security. Well, up until just several years ago, we didn't. This standard was somewhat more of a suggestion than an enforcement. But let's see what's going on in the industry that's kind of driving this whole compliance market, and it's going to continue to get bigger because of a few things that are happening in our environment. So let's just take a look here just for a moment. So here right now, we'll just do a quick drawing here of you, right? So, whoops, your eyeball's a little low, but that's okay. So you have your device, right? Whatever that device is, some sort of device, maybe it's a cell phone, or maybe, it's a tablet or your computer at home, okay? And you're using things today, things that are out in the cloud that you just use and take for granted. We all do. Love them, by the way, right? So you've got things like Facebook or LinkedIn. Here we can share, nice pictures of everybody, smiling and having a good time. All of these things, great stuff, right? We also do a lot of text type of messaging to one another, constantly online. We have our business relationships here that we store, right? We have all types of information that we're sharing out on the cloud. In fact, although I don't have the actual study, but if you were to look from, let's just say 1990, I would imagine that the growth rate has been like this for data. So we store more and more personal data out online. Not only do we store our own personal data, but everybody else is storing data as well, right? The old days of the store, those days are over. Right now, what do? We don't go to the mall. We go online. So we want to buy everything that we have online. We want to go to the Amazons of the world and different shopping sites. And so, of course, all of their data is getting stored inside of the cloud as well. So we have this huge increase of data. Not only are we using data for personal use, but we also have law enforcement agencies. Remember, have you passed by a traffic signal on a road today? There's always some sort of camera there taking your picture, right? So whatever it be, we have lots and lots of data, and this data is growing and growing and growing. And so what's happening? Well, the bad guys see this data, right? Your bank information, location information. You've got all types of data that when you put all of this stuff together, it can actually equal something, which is risk, right? Whether it's risk for you or, more importantly, what we're talking about here today, risk to our country. And so what do we do? How are we dealing with all of this that's going on in our environment today? Well, the way that we're dealing with this is quite simple. The federal government goes and they go ahead and just add to us different standards. So they build from standards. Everything is built from some sort of security standard. We have to have something that we can all comply to and then validate. And so what does the government do? The government employs different standard bodies. And the one that is really settling in for the government is a standard called NIST. And many people use the standards found in the publication NIST 800-53. Now, there are many standards in there. And so who is actually using this standard? Well, of course, you've got Department of Defense. You've got your intel community, not Intel the manufacturer, intelligence, CIA, FBI, those guys. And then you've got your civilian federal government people. Those are people like the post office, things like that. And they're all beginning to adopt these standards called 800-53. Now, they're not the end all. They're still creating their own security controls and will have their own individual standards within the agencies. But generally speaking, they have consolidated down to a set of standards. And why is this important? This is important because we can look at our IT systems, all of our clouds that we have built out around the world, and we can monitor them and make sure that the bad guy can't get in. So we're monitoring these clouds and making sure that these clouds are complying to these standards, right? So there's that ugly word again, compliance. We want to make sure that all of these clouds all over the world are in compliant. Now, what are some things that are being controlled? Not only did we explain data up here, but we have lots of things that need to be controlled, right? We've got energy plants. We've got, let me see here. Let's just list a few. You've got energy. You've got, public services in general, right? So that's going to be things like your water, right? Electricity, your sewer. All of these things, although you may take for granted that those services are offered, those require a form of compliance to standards. So, what are we saying here? As our data and our need for data and the use of data continues to skyrocket, which it is, the need for controls or security around this data is going to continue to skyrocket as well. This is a poor picture of a lock, by the way. And so what does that mean for compliance? We're going to have to manage the security in these environments. And that is why we see a huge influx of ATOs within the federal government, the authority to operate, but these reach down into all types of markets. So higher education, they have certain security standards. Banking, of course, lots of standards there. The finance communities, they have lots of standards there. Of course, healthcare, you've got lots of standards there. So there's lots of these standards that, although they may not be called an ATO compliance, there's lots of compliance work going on with multiple verticals. Now, where are we today? Well, we're at the tip of this iceberg. Now, it may seem that we have a lot of data, and yes, we do have a lot of data that's out there, but we're just at the tip of what is the next generation of computing. And that next generation of computing is going to include all of the things that we've talked about here today. So compliance, and security and standards are going to be a thing of the future. They already are starting to impact, and how we manage those are going to have a direct impact on our operating expense.